Hi,
Hello, Walter.
how are you?
Good. How was the wedding last night?
Beautiful, really beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of people.
yeah,
A lot of people.
a lot of people, very beautiful.
Good.
Okay, let's wait for
Did he
Rabbi.
get on a Did he get on a flight?
I don't know yet. I don't know. Not today. No, he's still here.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Okay, we're on Samech Daled 64. Aim lecha krabonon spherely. Maybe Rabbi Shmuel holds like the Rabbanon. We're talking about the when you sieve 3 saw or 5 saw, depending on whether it's Shabbos or during the week. So I'd come on Rabbi Shmuel b'nosh Rav Yechid b'Breiko Hasam by the when Erev Pesach is on Shabbos, and when you open up the hide only until the breast, because that's all that's required to remove the innards, and you want to reduce the Chilul Shabbos, Ela disyavid leitzarach gavoa, because that's trying to fulfill Hegdish and doing korbanos. And you've accomplished it. Below tzarach achol Shabbos. And you don't have to be Machal Shabbos more than you need. Aval hachad lo yisavid leitzarach kufa. Here by the Minchas Oimer, you already are doing enough if you only use 3 saw instead of 5 saw. And to go more tzarach l'chulei Shabbos, maybe emik rabbanon svirle. That maybe he would agree with the Chachamim, where you could do as much as on Shabbos as you do in Chol. It's not. The oimer was harvested with only one person. The magalechad with one sickle, uvekufachas one box. Uvechol during the week, b'shloisha, b'sholosh kupos, v'shlosh magalos. You had 3 of each. V'chachamim oimrim echad Shabbos v'echad chol. Shabbos you did the same thing as chol. B'sholosh kupos, v'shlosh magalos. And Milo Kom Rav Chaninus Kanakwanim Hasam, why did he say that you could do exactly like chol? Kivin de Shalot Archina. You can do everything regarding the oim with only one. Why should we do it with 3? Hachanami Kivin de Shalot Archina. Since Rabbi Shmuel also would hold, you can bring the oimer from just 3. We shouldn't do the extra tircha to bring it from 5. However, the Gemara says, Mimai, perhaps they're not agreeing. Dilmad kan like Rabbi Shmuel Acha. Maybe Rabbi Shmuel only said that you only do 3. Ela deleka persume milsa. Whether one person goes through 3 saw or one person goes through 5 saw, there's only one person doing it. So there's no publicity, extra publicity. Avalasam deke persume milsa. But when you have 3 by the oimer, where you have 3 different people who are harvesting, but there's persume nisa, Emer Krabonon Svirle, who said that you use 3 even on Shabbos. Or Inami Adkol Mekam Ruchanis Kana Konim Asam, the Ibachadi B'Shlosh Tzrak Gavoa Misavit Kil Chasam. Whether you harvest the oimer with 1 or 3, the hegdish is going to be done. Aval hacha, but by the using 3 versus 5 saw, where you get finer flour with 5. Maybe he would have liked the chacham that allows 5. Elam Rav Ashi, Rabbi Shmuel, Rav Yosi are medavrecha. It's not. There is a machloikes by Kiddush HaChodesh. So let's say the moon is seen very clearly so that everyone can see it. So Bein Shenir Balil Vein Shalonir Balil Mechalal Lavas Shabbos. The Adim can walk more than Tchum Shabbos in order to come and give testimony to Bezdin. And Chachamim were lenient because they want to make sure that nobody's going to be inhibited to go. So they remove the rabbinic prohibition. However, Rabbi Yossi doesn't allow that. Imnira ba'alil, if the new moon was seen in clear skies, then you don't have to, someone's going to come. And therefore, we don't allow Emechalam of Shabbos. Milo am Rabbi Yossi Yosem Kivan de Efshal Lotachina. Since we're avoiding extra tircha, then we shouldn't let them do it in our case. Since you can do the work with 3 saw instead of 5 saw, we should do less tircha. However, the Gemara says it's not connected. Bimai. You know why Rabbi Shmuel said you shouldn't do 5, only do 3? By the Adim, there's a problem. If you don't let them come, they won't come the next time. But here, there's no such svara. But if you don't let them come, they may not come next time. Maybe he would also agree that, like the Chacham, that everyone's allowed to be Machal Shabbos no matter what, whether it's seen Balil or not. Kiddush HaChodesh is not offering korbanos, which is tzrach kavoya. And therefore, lo nitne Shabbos litchos. We know that the Shabbos is by kodshim, but not necessarily here. But when it comes, the minchas oimer is a kodshim offering, and therefore nitne Shabbos litchos emek rabbanan svirle, that you can cut as much tvu as you need, up to 5. Itmar. You have on a musaf, every musaf for Yom Tiv, there's a chatas brought by the community. But let's say he shechted 2 of them. The second one is not needed. Shachat shtei chatos shel tzibur, ve'eno tzarech el achas, Omer Rabba v'yitem Ravami chayiv al shniya. He thought, for example, it's permitted. He was wrong. So it's a shogeg, he has to bring a chatas. Potter al Rishona, because on the Rishona, he thought it was appropriate to slaughter the first one. Let's say there was some problem with the first one, that like the blood is spilled, and you have to use the second one. So even though you use it, you still are chayiv chatas. Let's say you find out that the first animal was much weaker than the second, and it's always more coveted to offer a nicer animal. He has 2 chatas in front of him on Shabbos. Achas shmeina, achas kusha. One is fatty, one is thin. And then shochat shmeina, which is what he should have done. There's no point in shechting the second one, so he's chayiv for shechting the second one. However, if first he did the lean one, then the fatty one, then he's not chayiv at all, because lechatchila you should always shech the nicer one. If you find a nicer one later on, you should do that. Potter. They tell him after the kushan, you find a nicer one, l'chadchila, go and shecht it. So how can Rabbah say what he said previously? That the case of the kachusha has to be removed from Rabbah's first limud. Hahi Rabami Amra, that it's not Rabbah, it's Rabami. Al Ravina Ravashi. Nimtzis Arishon Chusa b'nei Me'ayin. not on the outside, but on the inside, when they cut up the pieces, they found that inside the first one is not as nice as the second. Now, that implies that he didn't know until after he shechted it that the first one was not as good as the second. Do we go after his machshava? Basar machshavtu azlinon? The Gavrili circum when he shechted the second one, he didn't know that the first one was not as nice as the second one, and therefore you're chayiv. Or maybe it has nothing to do with his machshava. Tachlis, what does it look like after you shechted it? If the second one was the better one, then maybe he'd be potter. Omer lei lavhainu de Rabba v'Rava. This is what Rabba and Rava ruled on, the Itmar. Shama shetova tinuk bayam. Somebody's on a boat, and they say, oh, there's a child drowning. Uparash metzuda lalis doki. Now, you're not allowed to fish on Shabbos. It's like we're learning in Surba. You're not allowed to trap an animal. And he threw the nets into the water, and his kavanah was to catch fish. Ve'ela dogim, and fish come up, they're chayiv. Now, if his machshava was la'alois dagim, ve'ela dogim v'tinok, but in the end, the child came up in the net. Rav Amar chayiv, because his intent was still not to save a life, because his intent was to fish. Rav Amar potter. Rabbi says we look at what happened in the end. Since in the end he saved the child, that's what we focus on. That can Rabbi loiko potter elakiven deshamar mina nami daite atinak. Maybe since the word was going on that there was a child in the water, besides his machshava on the fish, he had machshava on the child as well. But let's have a lo shamale. Rabba would not potter him in a case where he hadn't heard anything. Just because the child came up, that doesn't potter him. So you see, it's the machshava that's driving everything here. Ikadi Amri, other people learn the sugi differently. Amr lei, hainu plug tayu de Rabba v'Rav. This is machlekes Rabba and Rava, the Otmar. Shama shetova tinak b'yam. He heard that there was a child drowning. Uparsh mitzudalalis dogim. And he had intent when he cast his net to catch fish. Vela dogim, and the fish came up, chayiv. Now, if he had intent lalos dogim, vehela tinik v'dagim, and both the child and the fish came up, Rabba Amar potter, because in the end, we can say he probably had his mind on the tinik as well. Rabba Amar chayiv, no, because his intent was purely for the dogim. Rabba Amar potter, because zil basar ma'isa. We go after what happened in the end. In the end, we don't care about his machshav. We care what happened. Rabba Amar chayiv zil basar machshavta. Amar Rabba. Choylish amdu ligroigres achas. You have on a Shabbos, the doctor said he needed a dry fig to save his life. Rotzu asar bnei adam beviu asar grogres b'vasachas. 10 people ran to get figs. And let's say they carry Daled Amos Precious Arabim. They're all potter, because all of them had the intent to save a life. It's not just the first person, it's everybody. Afilu b'zachar zeh. Even if it's sequential, they don't all go at the same time, they go one by one. Now, after the first guy goes, the other guys really weren't needed. But since the intent, their machshava, was to save a life, there's a special kula. Afilu kodem v'hivri b'rishona. Even by the time they get back, the person is well. He got better. Because the first guy brought a fig and he ate it and felt better. So we go after intent. If their intent was to save a life, then we rule leniently. Boy Rava, choylish amdu lishtei groikres. They said that the sick person needed 2 figs. And on a tree, yeshtei grogos b'shtei uktzim. There are 2 stems with 2 figs. V'shalosh ba'oiketz achas. There's 1 stem that has 3 figs. Now you don't need 3, you only need 2. But there you only cut 1 stem. In the other case, you have to cut 2 stems. What's better? Heimina maisina. Shtay maisina the chazule. You bring the 2. He doesn't need any more. Maybe you cut the stem with the 3 because then you're only doing 1 cutting. And the Gemara says, you minimize the chilul by cutting only once. And the ad cut like Rabbi Shmuel Hassam. Rabbi Shmuel said only use 3 saw of barley, not 5. There's also an aspect, since you need less flour, you cut less. By eating less figs, you're actually cutting more. Even he would agree that you cut the 1 stem that has the 3 figs. Mitzvah soim mishnah. Mitzvah soim lavim in akarov. You try to bring the barley that's closest to Yerushalayim. The Gemara will give us reasons. Lo bikir akarov Yerushalayim. If the barley close to Yerushalayim is not ripe, mevina sami komakim. You can bring them from anywhere, even far away. And Ma'isa Shabbat Omer migagos trifin. It was a place gagos trifin far away. Ushtei alechem mebikas ein soicher, which are far from Yerushalayim. My time, why do you have to bring barley close by? Carmel. Carmel means like fresh, soft. And if you come from a long place, the winds will like make them tough. You don't pass by a barley field because you're mavir ala mitzvahs. Do the mitzvah when you come as soon as you can do it. The Mishnah said there was a story that they brought an oimer from the Gagos Trifin. Aristobulus and Hyrcanus were 2 brothers. This was the end of the Hashmonaim dynasty, 63 BC. The way to remember it is Julius Caesar was assassinated 44 BC. And the Roman general that helped Hyrcanus, Aristobulus, was in Yerushalayim. Hyrcanus was sieging around Yerushalayim. It was a civil war. That's why we say Sinas China. When we say the Churban happened because of Sinas China, it really refers to this civil war between brothers. Because this is when the Romans took power away from the Hashmonaim. The Hashmonaim didn't rule anymore. Pompey was the Roman general who helped Hyrcanus attack Yerushalayim. Now remember, Julius Caesar assassinated Pompey in Egypt. So that's how we remember the time. So this is 63 BC, and Julius Caesar was killed 44 BC. Hyrcanus was on the outside, Aristobulus was inside. Now they had to bring the korban oila. Every day, the people on the inside would lower a basket filled with money. And the people on the outside would take the money, buy a lamb, put a lamb, and bring it up the walls so the Beis HaMikdash could offer a lamb for the Oilas HaTamim. There was an old man who knew Greek wisdom. He knew how to speak Roman, he knew how to speak Latin or Greek. He spoke to the people outside. As long as you keep on sending the lambs, the Beis HaMikdash will not fall to your hands because the korban is protecting them. L'machar shil shalem dinar bekupa. The next day, the Jews on the inside dropped the money as usual. The helul and chazir, and they brought a pig into the basket. Kivan shegiz l'chatzi choyma. When the pig was halfway up the wall, he stuck his fingernails into the wall to prevent being dragged up there. Not sipona v'choyma v'nizdadeh Eretz Yisrael, and the Eretz Yisrael shook. Arba meos parsel, 400 by 400 parcels. Those are shomru or sheyigal chazir. At that time, they said three things. Cursed is the person who raises pigs. Or shilamid bo chachma yavonis. Cursed is the person who teaches his son chachma yavonis, Greek wisdom. At that time was the Maisa Sheba Oimer Migagus Thrifin, Ushte Alechem Mibikas Ein Socher. That's where they had to bring the Oimer from very far places. Because Kimata Oimer, Lavayod Meichaisi Oimer. The time came to bring the Oimer, they didn't know where to bring it, where to bring the Oimer from. The armies outside of Yerushalayim had destroyed everything. So there were no barley fields. Achruzu, they announced, also Chersha, they announced, whoever knows where the barley is grown should come. Also, a certain person who couldn't speak, he was mute, came. Oisiv Chadiyada Aigra, he put one hand on a roof, the Chadiyada Yatsrifa, and another on a hut, which is called a tzrif. Amalu Mordechai. Now, remember, Mordechai, a Yehudi in the time of Esther, was an expert at languages. But he can't be alive. It's 250 years before this. So there was always somebody named Mordechai in part of the Anshe Knesset, or who fulfilled the job of Mordechai, who knew various languages, so they called him Mordechai. He said, Mi'ika duchta, Tishmo gagos trifin or trifin gagois? Is there a place that's called roofs, huts, or huts roofs? But Kuvashkachu, they found a place called gagos trifin, and that's where they found bark. Kiboy lasui shtei alechem, Shvuas came. Lava yoda meichel lasui. They didn't know where to bring the shtei alechem. Achruz, again, they said, come and tell us where the wheat is growing. Also, Gavra Chirsha, a certain mute person came. Oisav yadei ha'enei. He put his hand on his eye. V'chada yoda sichra. And another hand on the socket for a door, which is called soicher. Amar Mordechai, me'ika duchta d'shma ein socher socher ayin. But Kuvashka, they found there's a place, ein socher, that's where they found the wheat for the shtei lechem. Hanu sholosh noshi. We're going to see how this guy these Mordechais could figure things out. There were three women, the Aisu sholosh kinim. Each one brought a pair of birds. Now, a pair of birds could either be two olos, if they're donative, or they could be a chatas and ola if you owe it for certain korbanos. One of the women said, Chada Amr Zivasi, because I'm a Zava. At the time of the Chazal, there were 7 days of Nidus followed by 11 days of Zivus. If in the 11 days of Zivus, a woman saw 3 days in a row of Zivus bleeding, she would be declared a Zava Gdola. She has to count 7 clean days, and she has to bring a korban on the 8th day. Chada Amr le Yamosi, for my ocean. Chada Amr lo Einosi, for my ona. Now, the other Chachamim Svormine, Zivasi was Zava Mamish. When she said Zivasi, means she was a Zava Gdola. And Liamosi Mamish, it also refers to Zivus, because of Zava's flow. And Loinasi Loina. The time, the 8th day, that she has to bring her korban and a Zava Gdol. So they thought it all meant relating to Zava Gdola. And therefore, the pairs of birds, the Kula Chada Chates V'Chada Oila. When a Zava brings a pair of birds, one is a Chates, one is an Ola. Amlu Mordechai, no. Shema Bezav Sichna. She was bleeding from her uterus. And so much so that she thought she was going to die. And that if she survives, she was going to bring a pair of birds as an Ola. Shema Bayam Sichna, when she says Yamasi, because she was on a boat and she was in danger of dying. Shema Beina Sichna, or no, she said her own, but maybe it has to do with her eye. She had some kind of eye sickness. And really, she's bringing donative korbanos. The kula olis ninu. Baruch v'ashkach, they checked, and Mordechai was correct. Okay. Yeshikoch tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Tonight, 8 o'clock at Tzorba.
Baruch Hashem, it's Daf Yomi Menachos. From there, are you?
Okay,
I wanted to know if you're interested in sponsoring Shabbos Day learning at Yeshiva.
not at the moment, but thank you anyway. How much is
Okay, no problem.
how much is Shabbos Day learning?
118 a week.
Huh?
118 a week.
118 a week.
Yeah.
Which yeshiva is this? Just explain to me. How do I know you?
I work at the mitzvah store. You probably see me there.
Yeah. And
So there's a yeshiva in the valley that I go to. It's called Ner Aryeh.
yeah.
Ever heard of it?
No.
So it's a yeshiva. It's a Chavetz Chaim yeshiva in the valley. There's like 55 guys or so.
Bochrim, yes. Okay.
And so we have a Friday night, a Shabbos Day learning, and we have refreshments for the guys that come. So that's it.
Okay. I hear you. Okay. And what? How are you going to send me? How am I going to send it to you?
I can send you a link. I can send you a Zelle, whatever, tax ID, whatever's easier for you.